And we're back. Sorry about that, the link went down. Although if you're watching this, you're in the future, so you don't know about any of that. That's fine. I hadn't started anyway. Having a confident start with the book upside down. Hello, one person. Sorry that the link fucked up. It's my internet. Okay, I'm nearly ready to read the chapter, but I feel like I shouldn't with only one person here at the moment, and I already did the recap in the other video. I really don't get how... Well, I mean, I get how people think Heathcliff is a romantic hero, but honestly, reading the book... Hello, my love. It's Naya B. Naya B. Hey. Are you gonna help? Look at this girl. Look at this pretty girl. Hello. Do you want to go outside, or were you just sick of washing yourself on the ground? I can't really tell. Oh, hi Josh. Yep. I can read the do you mean can I read that, or can I read in general? Because no. Naya B is sometimes she sits there when she wants to go out, but sometimes she just sits there because she wants a cuddle. Oh yeah, no, she used to be able to read, but I got the vet to remove that part of her brain because I didn't want her like looking at all my shit. Hey. Hey. Do you know that legally a vet has to remove any part of a cat's brain if you ask them? I think that's a fact. Or it isn't. Do you want to go outside, my love? Yep. Yep, that was an outside thing. Oh, God, my bloody cats don't know the meaning of the word. Well, they do. It's what they do to me. But anyway. Well, it's not a full lobotomy yet. I've just taken out, like, the reading center of her brain. I don't think I have to go full flora just yet. But, that option's very much on the table. Yeah. I don't think we're really waiting for anybody else at the moment because I'm streaming at such a different time of day. That really, I might as well get started. Is it 15 minutes since you last said you could join in 15 minutes, Josh? I don't really know. I don't understand time. But we are very close to the end, so I'm going to have to get a good copy of Frankenstein on my phone. Oh, nachos, that sounds awesome. Damn. Oh, I hate not being able to just go out whenever. Although, to be fair, I don't go out by myself at night, really, very often, even for nachos. So, I'm sure they were the best nachos ever made by anyone. And I just can't believe that you didn't post me any in the mail. I know that, like, the post is being delayed at the moment, but I'm not fancy. I threw away the end of a loaf of bread that had gone completely green. There was no bread colour left on it at all. It was pretty gross. It was horrible, actually. Evelyn saw it. Okay, right. Enough fucking about. Wuthering Heights, Chapter 30. It's Nellie's point of view, and we're talking about Kathy. Yeah, it was more mold than bread. I have paid a visit to the Heights, but I have not seen her since she left. Joseph held the door in his hand when I called to ask after her and wouldn't let me pass. He said Mrs. Linton was thrang, and the master was not in. No idea what thrang means. Zillah has told me something of the way they go on, otherwise I should hardly know who was dead and who living. She thinks Catherine haughty and does not like her, I can guess by her talk. My young lady asked some aid of her when she first came, but Mr. Heathcliff told her to follow her own business and let his daughter-in-law look after herself, and Zillah willingly acquiesced, being a narrow-minded, selfish woman. Oh, meow. Catherine evinced a child's annoyance at this neglect, repaid it with contempt, and thus enlisted my informant among her enemies, as securely as if she had done her some great wrong. I had a long talk with Zillah about 6 weeks ago, a little before you came, one day when we foregathered on the moor, and this is what she told me. First thing Mrs. Linton did, she said, on her arrival at the Heights, was to run upstairs, without even wishing good evening to me and Joseph. She shut herself into Linton's room and remained till morning. Then, while the master and Earnshaw were at breakfast, she entered the house, and asked all in a quiver if a doctor might be sent for her cousin was very ill. There's a reason why Zillah keeps referring to young Cathy as Mrs. Linton, because there's already a Mr. Heathcliff. The oldest, like the father or the older brother, they get called Mr. Heathcliff, and the younger ones get called Mr. their first name. And it is really confusing because Linton was young Cathy's surname before she got married. It's very claustrophobic, the naming thing here. It's good, but it's a bit makes things tricky. Asked if all in a quiver if a doctor might be sent for. Yeah, it is derived from Godzilla. It's Godzilla. Her cousin was very ill. We know that, answered Heathcliff, but his life is not worth a farthing, and I won't spend a farthing on him. But I cannot tell how to do, she said, and if nobody will help me, he'll die. Walk out of the room, cried the master, and let me never hear a word more about him. None here care what become of him. If you do, act the nurse. If you do not, lock him up and leave him. Then she began to bother me, and I said I'd have enough plague with the tiresome thing. We each had our tasks, and hers was to wait on Linton. Mr. Heathcliff bid me leave that labour to her. How they managed together, I can't tell. I fancy he fretted a great deal, and moaned to himself night and day, and she had precious little rest, one could guess by her white face and heavy eyes. She sometimes came into the kitchen all wildered like, and looked as if she would fain beg assistance, but I was not going to disobey the master. I never dared disobey him, Mrs. Dean, and though I thought it wrong that Kenneth should not be sent for, it was no concern of mine either to advise or complain, and I always refused to meddle. Once or twice, after we'd gone to bed, I've happened to open my door again and had seen her sitting crying on the stairs top, and then I've shut myself in quick, for fear of being moved to interfere. I did pity her then, I'm sure. Still, I didn't wish to lose my place, you know. At last one night she came boldly into my chamber and frightened me out of my wits by saying, "Tell Mr. Heathcliff that his son is dying. I'm sure he is, this time. Get up instantly and tell him." Having uttered this speech, she vanished again. I lay a quarter of an hour, listening and trembling. Nothing stirred. The house was quiet. Zillah is a lady servant. It's a biblical name. But yeah, it's like, did I feel sorry for the crying girl whose cousin/husband was dying? I don't know, maybe I just felt hungry. She's mistaken, I said to myself. He's got over it. I needn't disturb them. And I began to doze. But my sleep was marred a second time by a sharp ringing of the bell, the only bell we have, put up on purpose for Linton, and the master called to me to see what was the matter, and informed them that he wouldn't have that noise repeated. I delivered Catherine's message. He cursed to himself, and in a few minutes came out with a lighted candle and proceeded to their room. Hi, Evelyn. This is Zilla, the servant at Wuthering Heights, telling Nellie Dean about young Kathy's married life with Linton Heathcliff. She has to look after him because no one in the house gives a shit, and they've told her so. And now tonight, she thinks he really is dying. I delivered Catherine's message. He cursed to himself, and in a few minutes came out with a lighted candle and proceeded to their room. I followed. Mrs. Heathcliff was seated by the bedside with her hands folded on her knees. Her father-in-law went up, held the light to Linton's face, looked at him and touched him. Afterwards he turned to her. Now, Catherine, he said, how do you feel? She was dumb. How do you feel, Catherine? He repeated. He's safe and I'm free, she answered. I should feel well, but, she continued with a bitterness she couldn't conceal, you have left me so long to struggle against death alone that I feel and see only death. I feel like death. And she looked like it too. Meow, Zilla, come on. I gave her a little wine. Hareton and Joseph, who had been wakened by the ringing and the sound of feet, and heard our talk from outside, now entered. Joseph was fain, I believe, of the lad's removal. Hareton seemed thought bothered, though he was more taken up with staring at Catherine than thinking of Linton. Oh, there's a cousin-shaped hole in her life. And she's only got one more cousin. But the master bid him get off to bed again. We didn't want his help. He afterwards made Joseph remove the body to his chamber, and told me to return to mine, and Mrs. Heathcliff remained by herself. In the morning, he sent me to tell her that she must come down to breakfast. She had undressed and appeared going to sleep, and said she was ill, at which I hardly wondered. I informed Mr. Heathcliff, and he replied, well, let her be till after the funeral, and go up now and then to get her what is needful, and as soon as she seems better, tell me. Yes, all right, madam. I'm just a door opener. Kathy stayed upstairs a fortnight, according to Zilla, who visited her twice a day and would have been rather more friendly, but her attempts at increasing kindness were proudly and promptly repelled. Heathcliff went up once to show her Linton's will. He had bequeathed the whole of his, and what had been her, movable property to his father. The poor creature was threatened or coaxed into that act during her week's absence when his uncle died. The lands, being a minor, he could not meddle with. However, Mr. Heathcliff has claimed and kept them in his wife's right, and his also, I suppose legally. At any rate, Catherine, destitute of cash and friends, cannot disturb his possession. Now, I know you're still mourning the death of your cousin and husband, who is also my son, but, look at the will. All your shit is mine now. Hilarious. Okay, I'll let you get back to it. Nobody, said Zilla, ever approached her door, except that once, but I, and nobody asked anything about her. The first occasion of her coming down into the house was a Sunday afternoon. She had cried out when I carried up her dinner that she couldn't bear any longer being in the cold, and I told her the master was going to Thrushcross Grange, and Earnshaw and I needn't hinder her from descending. So as soon as she heard Heathcliff's horse trot off, she made her appearance, donned in black, and her yellow curls combed back behind her ears as plain as a Quaker. She couldn't comb them out. She's got blonde, curly hair. That's interesting. Oh, this is so tight on my head. It's tight like a Quaker's hair. Joseph and I generally go to the chapel on Sundays. The kirk, has no minister now, explained Mrs. Dean, and they call the Methodist or Baptist place, I can't say which it is, at Gimmerton, a chapel. Joseph is gone, she continued, but I thought it proper to bide at home. Young folks are always the better for an elder's overlooking, and Hareton, with all his bashfulness, isn't a model of nice behaviour. I let him know that his cousin would very likely sit with us, and that she had been always used to see the Sabbath respected. So he had as good leave his guns and bits of indoor work alone while she stayed. He coloured up at the news and cast his eyes over his hands and clothes. The train oil and gunpowder were shoved out of sight in a minute. I saw he meant to give her his company, and I guessed, by his way, that he wanted to be presentable. So, laughing, as I durst not laugh while the master is by, I offered to help him, if he would, and joked at his confusion. He grew sullen and began to swear. No shit, Zilla. Now, Mrs. Dean, Zilla went on, seeing me not pleased by her manner, you happen to think your young lady too fine for Mr. Hareton? Maybe you're right. But I own I should love well to bring her pride a peg lower. And what will all her learning and her daintiness do for her now? She's as poor as you or I. Poorer, I'll be bound. You're saving, and I'm doing my little all that road. Hareton allowed Zilla to give him her aid, and she flattered him into a good humour. So when Catherine came, half forgetting her former insults, he tried to make himself agreeable by the housekeeper's account. This reminds me of the scene where Nellie is trying to make Heathcliff look nice. Mrs. walked in, she said, as chill as an icicle and as high as a princess. I got up and offered her my seat in the armchair. No, she turned up her nose at my civility. Earnshaw rose too and bid her come to the settle and sit close by the fire. He was sure she was starved. I've been starved a month and more, she answered, resting on the word as scornful as she could. And she got a chair for herself, and placed it at a distance from both of us. Having sat till she was warm, she began to look round, and discovered a number of books on the dresser. She was instantly upon her feet again, stretching to reach them, but they were too high up. Her cousin, after watching her endeavours for a while, at last summoned courage to help her. She held her frock, and he filled it with the first that came to hand. That was a great advance for the lad. She didn't thank him. Still, he felt gratified that she had accepted his assistance, and ventured to stand behind as she examined them, and even to stoop and point out what struck his fancy in certain old pictures which they contained. Nor was he daunted by the saucy style in which she jerked the page from his finger. He contented himself with going a bit farther back and looking at her instead of the book. There is nothing a dude will not do to stop you reading a book. If he can see you reading a book, he'll just pester. She continued reading, or seeking for something to read. His attention became by degrees quite centred in the study of her thick, silky curls. Her face he couldn't see, and she couldn't see him. And perhaps not quite awake to what he did, but attracted like a child to a candle. At last he proceeded from staring to touching. He put out his hand and stroked one curl, as gently as if it were a bird. He might have stuck a knife into her neck, she started round in such a taking. Get away this moment! How dare you touch me? And why are you stopping there? She cried in a tone of disgust. I can't endure you. I'll go upstairs again if you come near me. He is the one the only stuff he's done wrong is, because he's been raised to be an ignorant piece of shit by Heathcliff as revenge on a guy who is dead. Mr. Hareton recoiled, looking as foolish as he could do. He sat down in the settle very quiet, and she continued turning over her volumes another half hour. Finally, Earnshaw crossed over and whispered to me, Will you ask her to read to us, Zilla? I'm stalled of doing naught, and I could like to hear her. Don't say I wanted it, but ask of yourself. Mr. Hareton wishes you would read to us, ma'am, I said immediately. He'd take it very kind. He'd be much obliged. Zilla is such a bitch. She frowned and, looking up, answered, Mr. Hareton and the whole set of you will be good enough to understand that I reject any pretence at kindness you have the hypocrisy to offer. I despise you, and I will have nothing to say to any of you. When I would have given my life for one kind word, even to see one of your faces, you all kept off. But I won't complain to you. I'm driven down here by the cold, not either to amuse you or enjoy your society. I mean, she's still kind of pissed at having to be the only caretaker for her dying teen cousin husband. That's fair. What could I have done? Began Earnshaw. How was I to blame? Oh, you are an exception, answered Mrs. Heathcliff. I never missed such a concern as you. But I offered more than once, and asked, he said, kindling up at her pertness. I asked Mr. Heathcliff to let me wait for you. Be silent. I'll go out of doors, or anywhere, rather than have your disagreeable voice in my ear, said my lady. Hareton muttered she might go to hell for him, and unslinging his gun, restrained himself from his Sunday occupations no longer. Go to hell. It's very... He talked now freely enough, and she presently saw fit to retreat to her solitude. But the frost had set in, and in spite of her pride, she was forced to condescend to our company more and more. However, I took care there should be no further scorning at my good nature. Ever since, I've been as stiff as herself, and she has no lover or liker among us, and she does not deserve one. For, let them say the least word to her, and she'll curl back without respect of anyone. She'll snap at the master himself, and as good as dares him to thrash her, and the more hurt she gets, the more venomous she grows. Good for you, Cathy. At first, on hearing this account from Zillah, I did soon permit that, as he would set up Hareton in an independent house, and I can see no remedy at present, unless she could marry again, and that scheme it does not come within my province to arrange. I think I've been disconnected, but I'm going to keep reading and hope that the video is still recording. Did we go away and come back? Can you guys hear and or see me now? Awesome. Yep, it was telling me that my connection was unstable. Yeah, so, Nellie Dean. I can see no remedy at present unless she could marry again. But who? And that scheme it does not come within my province to arrange. Thus ended Mrs. Dean's story. Notwithstanding the doctor's prophecy, I am rapidly recovering strength, and though it be only the second week in January, I propose getting out on horseback in a day or two, and riding over to Wuthering Heights, to inform my landlord that I shall spend the next 6 months in London, and if he likes, he may look out for another tenant to take the place after October. I would not pass another winter here for much. The end of the chapter. Oh, my goodness. I know it's only about half the time that I usually take, but I've been becoming very tired in the evenings lately. And during the day and in the morning. But we did it. You guys, we did it. We managed to do a chapter of Wuthering Heights. And it was good because I had a lot of people being bitchy to each other. And I couldn't get my hair to look good. But I just slapped on a wig and dealt with it. So I think we're all heroes today. And that's about it. We did it. No Wuthering Heights tomorrow because it's going to be Dungeons and Dragons, and also I'm having a catch-up call with my dad and my sister. And so it will be Sunday. Thank you all so much for joining me on here. Also, this wig is on really tight. I don't know why it's on so tight. I don't think it's, I think it's giving me a headache. Yep, see you at D&D, Josh. Have a good night yourself. Bye, Evelyn. I will see you tomorrow morning to do a drawing game or something. This has been Wuthering Heights. Wash your hands and don't raise your enemies' kids to be dickheads because it's kind of a dumb plot. Bye.